sculpt that curve to sound the way that you want it to sound, and really gives it like a buttery, silky, smooth high end that's really, really great, and has been a savior for a lot of the mixes that I've done.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it doesn't work with the plugin. So you really need the hardware for this. It doesn't work with the plugin, yeah.
Any of the
because
plugins?
It's not going, yeah, any plugin really of it, like this particular method, because it's not going through the electricity circuit. It's not going through the tubes. It's not going through like, the actual physical realm of, electricity.
Voltage.
So
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a really cool chip. My buddy Daniel Silberman was on the podcast recently, and he was telling me he'll just push into soothe, and then afterwards he'll like boost up the high end, because it's like you're getting rid of the problems, and then you can start to like and in response to that, I don't know if you listen to Wolfpack. Do you know the band Wolfpack?
Sometimes, yeah.
And so I know that Jack Stratton, who's like the founder, and he mixes I think most of the records, and they have like this very unique lo-fi sound, and he just he pushes into like tape emulators and then boosts treble, and then he pushes again into the tape emulator and boosts the treble, and you get this like really cool vintagey sound.
That's awesome.
Because the tape would dull everything, and then they would compensate back in the day, and like people talk about like Fleetwood Mac, running out of like the tape got so dark after like a year of spinning or whatever. So lots of ways.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's like getting good top end and getting rid of harshness is like an interesting discussion. I love that. I love that tip that you shared. So thank you for that.
Yeah, especially being in the box. Being in the box, you have all this information in the high end and in all your recordings, in all of your tracks. There's just so much information, and to the human ear, it just doesn't sound so pleasant compared to stuff that was made on tapes, made on tape and hardware. So you got to think like, what was it that made it sound so much nicer? And it was actually the lack of all this perfection in the top high end and all this brightness, all this literal information that was there. So if you deteriorate it in a really nice sounding way, that's actually much nicer to listen to for the human ear than all this perfection in the digital realm.
Yeah. I guess the question is, do we like the way it sounds old school because those are the records we grew up listening to, and that's the canon of music, or is that actually physically the way humans like to hear music? And I guess we'll never know.
There must be a little bit of both,
right?
There must be a little bit of both, because obviously there's an emotional component there from like your own personal memories, but I also still listen to music I've never heard before, like I don't know, from the 70s or something. I was recently listening to Steely Dan, and never really dove into it. And I was listening to it. I was like, wow, this sounds so great.
It's amazing.
And it was like from 1977 or something, and it sounded huge and just so amazing. I was like, how did they do this? And it was from the 70s. So it was like, well, it must have been the gear and the skills of these engineers who knew exactly what they were doing with the gear.
Yeah, Steely Dan is like the anomaly, of like just musicians, engineers, just like all stops making just amazing music, and that's
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're so good. Yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah, so just like the digital realm and all the perfection we were talking about, just one way to actually kind of emulate that in the digital realm is to kind of go back to like either, let's say, tape emulators, or maybe Soothe, something like that, or like distortion saturation can really help you get closer to that. Or just sending something out digitally through hardware, run it through the hardware, and then just download it.
Do you have anything else that you like typically send out to analog hardware, like in that same kind of sense? Or is that the biggest one?
This was a huge one for vocals and for individual parts of the mix, but I will, if I'm asked to do a master, I will use the Better Maker mastering limiter, which just sounds really great and gets super loud without really crushing something. So the Pultec EQ is one of my favorites, and the Better Maker.
Yeah.
And that's really all that I'm doing. Like they also have other stuff like compressors, 1176 and LA2A and stuff, but I'm just not really using them, and I find that I get enough out of my plugins for in terms of like individual compression, that actually just like that really buttery, silky hardware sound for like EQ or mastering, limiting with like the clipper engaged. That sounds really, really great through hardware. Yeah, but it's actually, I keep it really simple.
Amazing. And so you kind of were mentioning that you kind of have like the Pro L2 on your master bus, and I know you do some mastering. Do you ever, are you usually mastering your mixes? Are you sending it out? And what does that process look like?
I actually do like let's call it a pre-master. So I like to send out my mixes already loud in the sense of like, this is how they're gonna sort of hit in terms of loudness once they are mastered. So that's just for the client to listen to, for the client to get a feel of the song. And obviously once it does get mastered, I'll take all that limiting off. I'll usually either keep the clipping, like the standard clip. I'll either keep it on the mix that's sent out for mastering, or I will send two versions, one with and one without. Because I feel like usually when I take the clipping off, that really, really takes away a lot of like the sauce that was happening in the whole mix. So I usually like to keep it, but like we really don't need to keep the limiter on there at all. So usually I have like 6 dB of headroom still with like a tiny little bit of clipping on there already happening.
Yeah. It's interesting, the whole topic of like, what do you send to the mastering engineer? And of course, everybody while they're mixing is referencing masters, and like mixing into limiter is just like a lot of the sound of a modern record. And when you take that off, you can kind of lose, like you were saying, like the sauce, I guess, with your clipper, of like, there was a whole, someone was telling me about this. There was like a whole forum. It was on Gearspace with I forgot his name, but the person that works with Serban, who does like all the big mixes.
Yeah.
And
John.
Yes, it was John something.
John something. I'm so sorry, I forgot his name.
Yeah. Well, I don't know him personally, so but when I meet him, then I'll
Johnny.
I'll remember exactly. Yeah, Johnny. And he was saying that they send things out like to mastering, however the client approved it. So it's like, this is what the client approved. This is what's getting sent to mastering. So mastering can't undo anything that was already like approved by the client.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which I hear.
I mean, especially at that level.
Right, at that level. Yeah, I'm sure his monitoring is like probably insane. Like he probably hears literally everything, I imagine.
I can't even imagine it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, or you could do, what I do is like, I like to communicate with my mastering engineer and let them take care of that kind of loudness stuff. And
even better.
Tell them if I don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, mastering is such a personal thing also for mix engineers, right? I mean, if anyone ever sends my mix out for mastering to someone that I don't know, I'm just like, oh, can you please keep me posted on like how the master's going? Can you please like just at least get me involved until the last moment? And actually a lot of the time I'm so happy that they do involve me in it, because sometimes the mix just gets completely annihilated and crushed just for the sake of loudness.
It's
and
insane,
I'm just like,
right?
Where is the low end? Where is the dynamics? Where is the transients? Everything's gone. So if you can like, if there is any way to get your mix mastered by a mastering engineer of your choice, that's even better. Like I have my go-to mastering engineer is Statinsky out here in the Netherlands. He's really, really great. He's really great to work with, great to communicate with, and he's got like a bunch of really awesome gear that he knows exactly how to work with. And I love his taste, and he respects the mix.
Right.
So he's not trying to reinvent the wheel, he's just like, this is the mix, how can I make it better? And that's actually ideal, for mixing and mastering engineers to work together like this.
Right. Yeah, because mixing engineer, you've put so much intent in your mix. Like, why get it?
Yeah.
Why have that be thrown away by just because loudness and slamming it,
Yeah.
And it's not like you can't.
Yeah, and then
I'm sure you could keep.
Sometimes they're just like
keep most of it and pretty loud. Exactly.
Yeah, it's competitive. It's the competitive loudness, and like, but nothing is like even poking out anymore. There's zero dynamics. There's like, there's no low end anymore, no subs, stuff like that. I'm just like, but it's loud. Yeah, okay. Congratulations on your loudness.
Yeah. Congratulations. You did it.
You made it loud.
Good job. Wait, so I'm assuming you're not mastering your own mixes. You're only mastering tracks that you didn't mix.
I do both. Yeah, sometimes the client just asks for it. And I'm just like, are you sure that you don't want to get like a mastering engineer to do it? And then once I have that conversation with them, they'll usually be like a little bit more open to like, oh, maybe I should get a mastering engineer. And then sometimes they're just like, no, you can do it. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm fine with that, Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time I'll pretty much know, a little bit like what I'm looking for in terms of mastering my own mix. So I'll monitor on different sets of speakers. I'll try really my hardest to make it the best that I can. But of course, my preference goes to hiring a mastering engineer.
But it is a separate process. It doesn't happen on the mix. It happens like you'll do it, like you'll print out the mix and then you'll take it from there.
Yeah, I'll print out the mix, and what I really love doing is using the Better Maker mastering limiter for this, and
right, it has like a built-in clipper and limiter simultaneously, right?
Yeah, and you can choose whether you want the clipper or not, and most of the time I will use the clipper. Sometimes it sounds a little bit better than the standard clip, or sometimes I'll dial back the standard clip just a little bit, and then I can use the clipper on the mastering limiter. And sometimes the standard clip is enough, or it just sounds great already, and then I just want that loudness that I can't really get from only the digital realm. So
right.
I can just really get that louder push, and just really, it just sounds great. This Better Maker mastering limiter just sounds great. So
yeah. And do you ever master also for clients where you didn't work on the song?
Yeah, it happens. Not very often, but it does happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something you enjoy? Is it something you're trying to push, or is it kind of like low key on the side?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's not something that I advertise because I don't consider myself a mastering engineer, but I do love sound and I do love making things sound great. And so sometimes it's stem mastering. Mm-hmm. So I'll get 5 groups that are just like the whole song. So I'll get like drums, vocals, music, bass, or something like that. And I'll do like a master like that. And that's actually the best way for me to do any mastering, is to get stems or get groups, group stems. Because I just have a little bit more freedom of like carving space out for things. And I find that that's my favorite way to work on mastering.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. But I'm assuming sending out, you're always sending out stereo mixes.
Yeah. I mean, as opposed to mono.
Yeah, as opposed to stems.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's going to be like the final product. Yeah.
So I know that you spoke to Xylo about mixing drums specifically, and I know you have like the hip hop drum thing down. Can you tell me a little bit about your approach to mixing hip-hop drums?
Hip-hop drums, probably my favorite thing to mix is just to make hip-hop drums really knock. By the way, speaking of knock, my friend Decap just released his own plugin called Knock, which is actually really great on hip-hop drums.
Oh, cool. It's like a transient designer thing?
Yeah, it's got transient design. It's got like a punch, saturation, a clip, a sub.
Wow.
Air.
Cool. Send me a link, please.
Yeah, I will. That's actually one of my favorite things to use on the drum bus, but I'll only use it lightly because, again, a lot of the stuff that's happening in my mixes is individually. So I like to use the SSL 4000 channel strip by Plugin Alliance. I'll usually have that on the kick and the snare, just because everything is in there. It's got EQ, it's got dynamics, it's got filtering, and it's got the built-in TMT stuff that they do where they emulate a hardware board, so outboard gear. So you can actually get like these really, really small intricacies small changes in between
Right.
stereo field and stuff. It sounds really, really great for your stereo image.
Yeah, I recently got hip to that and got it.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Usually have that on the kick and the snare.